Hello, everyone. My name is James Swanson. I'm here representing the Harlequins Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us for another installment of our Quality, Diversity and Inclusion panel discussion series. Today, in support of Mental Health Awareness Month, we'll be addressing sport and mental health. Before I pass over to Nick Heath, who will be our moderator for today, just want to say thank you very much to all of our panelists for giving up their time and sharing their stories with us today. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Good evening. Hello, and welcome to this Harlequins Foundation webinar on sport and mental health. We're hoping this is the perfect way to kick off Mental Health Awareness Week. And so thank you very much to each and every one of you for joining us this evening. My name is Nick Heath. As James said, I'm a Harlequins Foundation ambassador, also a rugby commentator and journalist. And over the course of this webinar series, we've been covering all sorts of areas related to equality, diversity and inclusion. We've looked at LGBTQ+ areas, disability, with future sessions to come on race and inequality and trans awareness as well. But today, as I said, our focus is on mental health and sport. And I'm delighted to be joined by four individuals who I'm really looking forward to hearing from. Thank you to those of you that have joined us. There will be others that will be receiving the recording of this Zoom. So there are many more with us or joining us at a later time. So panelists, you'll have to clap yourselves here. That's the Zoom way, that's how this works. So introducing our Movember Community Ambassador for the Harlequins Foundation, it's Glenn Clark. Hello, Glenn, thank you very much. The founder of men's mental health community interest company Blokes, set up last June, it's Tom Home. Very good. Harlequins women's rugby player and ambassador for mental health charity Brave Mind, it's Charlotte Wellbelove. Very good. And the player development and welfare manager at Harlequins, Major Andy Sanger, MBE, no less. We kept the title in there, Andy. Thank you all for joining me. I'd like to come to you first, Andy, actually, if I may. A player development and welfare manager. Can you tell us more about what that role is with Harlequins, first of all?
Yeah, Nick, thank you, and it's great to be on the call. Actually, firstly, I'm not quite sure still that I know exactly what I'm meant to be doing, because the job actually evolves continuously. But I've been with the club now 2 years, and initially when I came in, it was more around their wider off-field development, their assisting the players in their transition piece, which are all very important things. And I envisage, and I think the club envisaged, that maybe welfare would maybe 20% of the job. But actually, probably through the nature of how I am, and actually the way I think we are going in the club, and I think sport and young men and women currently, it probably takes up about 50% of my time. Partly because we are expanding the piece around trying to look after the family as well as the player. Because if we think about the subject mental health, if we can control as much as we can control around the player, and I don't mean that in a negative way of controlling, but just trying to make sure that his life is as seamless as possible, if you like, then it helps him perform, and therefore it helps him have issues that might then later on lead to mental health stresses.
And it's certainly an area that I mean, we're hearing more and more about. Obviously, Mental Health Awareness Week has been resonating well today. It's an area that just seems to be of ever-growing focus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kindly mentioned my previous profession. I'm trying to get away from that, but actually, both the organisation that I've come from and now the organisation that I'm in, Harlequins, I mean, I think they are probably as forward-leaning and care about trying to get this right as much as anyone. You know, we're certainly not perfect. We're certainly not the finished article, and there's a long way to go. But actually, I've been really surprised and energised by both the club and the individuals. And clearly, I deal predominantly with the men. But when you look at some of the individuals, and obviously there's some headliners with Joe Marler and Danny Kerr and a few of the others, but actually most of the boys really care about each other and care about each other's mental health, and the relationships that they build and the openness with which they speak to each other is heartwarming, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Glenn, I mean, how do you find that level of awareness and support at the top level is reflected at grassroots. What role can community rugby play in mental health?
Yeah, so my local team that I play for, Medway Rugby Club, I mean, over the past few years have helped me immensely with my own personal mental health journey, because for a long time, I kept a wraps on issues that I was dealing with, and then a few years ago, after getting involved with Movember and the foundation, when I decided to, as it were, come out as living with depression and anxiety. I mean, the support that I got from not just my teammates but the whole club, it was just mind blowing, and it is like those sorts of organizations, when they come together, if you can make that first step, to say, look, I've got an issue, I'm struggling, just that camaraderie that comes from the field translates into your personal life, and everyone checks in on everyone. And I have to say, this pandemic thing has gone really smoothly for me, simply because I've just had an immense amount of support through the whole thing.
Well, there's no need to show off. The only person that's sailed smoothly through the pandemic. Glenn, it's lovely to have you on the call. 1 in 60 million, excellent. I'm joking, of course, but actually, it's fantastic to hear that. But what would you say to sort of someone that may be feeling that it's getting a bit too much and they want to be able to reach out, but they don't have the confidence that maybe their rugby club or their environment is going to be as supportive? How can people, I don't know, test the water or get a sense of how it might be for them in what you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I've had, since I've, been open about my issue, then, I've had people that I would never have thought would have had issues have come to me for support and, advice and ideas. But we're both, me and those individuals are lucky that we have each other. And I realized that, that's not possible for everyone. And I think that's great that there are organizations like Movember, like, Tom's Blokes organization. There are those organizations out there where you can go anonymously, really. Samaritans, 111 on the NHS. That was my first point of contact. There is someone out there that you can speak to, and it is a case of just having, making that first step. And that is such a difficult step to make, but once you do make it, it gets a hell of a lot easier from then on.
Yeah, okay, wise words. We will come to Tom shortly. Charlotte, I'll come to you next. Brave Mind, for whom you're an ambassador, was set up by Cy Trower to help rugby support discussions around mental health in the community. Why did you want to be an ambassador?
So I personally haven't had like a mental health journey or anything like that, but my sister has been suffering with mental health issues and depression for about 2-3 years now. And obviously it took an effect on me, it took effect on my family. And just like since then, it got me to like educate myself to be more aware of it and to actually just want to help people, like Glenn said, just taking the first step. So our sports psychologist, Julie Thomas at Harlequins, she is also an ambassador, and she asked me and my friend Langi Tuima if we would want to be ambassadors, just to basically grow awareness, just help out mental health charities all together. And we were just like, yeah, we'd love to. So
yeah, I guess it's in all these sorts of areas, whether it's disability, LGBT stuff, or race, it's about having allies, isn't it? So I guess it's just as important with mental health. I mean, we hear a lot about initiatives to get men talking more about their mental health. What do you hear from the women's side?
I think it's pretty much like it's all very similar kind of stuff. I think as a team at Harlequins, we're a very close-knit group anyway. So we can just talk to anyone, you know, a great bunch of girls, and we have the big support system in place. So there's not really, I wouldn't say there are many initiatives at the moment, but as we are just very close, like we can just talk to each other. I feel like it's quite an open environment because we just have each other's backs, you know.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Tom, you started Blokes a year ago, June 2020, I understand. Now we hear lots about how much more conversation is happening in this area. So what was your motivation for what you wanted to achieve?
First and foremost, just want to say thank you so much to Harlequins Foundation for giving me this opportunity. It's massive and I more than appreciate it. I think my kind of initial drive to start something around men's mental health kind of arose at the beginning of my second year at Northumbria University. In November 2016, I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And in the space of sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I'd gone from being given this diagnosis to attempting to take my own life. And it kind of was when I reached rock bottom that I realized I needed some help. But like many, not just men, like many men and women, I didn't know where to turn to. I just didn't know what to do. And it was actually when I came home for a reading week that I actually just ended up sitting down and having a multiple hour conversation with my parents, who then kind of, you know, as would be expected, took me to the GP. I was prescribed antidepressants, and then was referred for NHS counselling and therapy. And after graduating in July 2018, still with the passion to want to do something around mental health. Unfortunately, as I'm sure a lot of uni grads can appreciate, you know, between trying to get myself a job and get on the property market, property ladder even, it just kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. And I think that was almost one of the only silver linings for me of lockdown, was the fact that I did have all this extra time, and I did have this extra capacity to actually put all my effort and energy towards actually thinking, what can I do here that not only raises awareness but actually makes a difference? And that's when Blokes was born.
Very good. I commentated on dogs chasing each other in the park. You set up an excellent mental health council. I think they're of a level. You also think the schools part is a big piece of it all, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I think, especially those sort of last 2 years from my personal experience, I think there was so much pressure in terms of needing to, or there was this unforeseen pressure of needing to know, you know, whether you're going to university or not, needing the grades to get in, feeling like you had to know what you needed to do for the next 50, 60 years of your life. And I think, you know, all that stress and all that overwhelm it's absolutely huge. And I'm sure, you know, not even just from a sixth form perspective, but even GCSE students can completely relate. So yeah, I really think it is something that as you get older, there are definitely more triggers that can certainly plant the seed of those underlying mental health conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting, isn't it, that kind of pressure that people are under and through the school level and those responsibilities. So it is interesting seeing more and more conversations happening with people now that it's not all about that journey to university necessarily and those sorts of pressures. Andy, we're getting more used to hearing about people's experiences. Talking does that. And certainly, well, I mean, from my own experience, I think it was about 14 years ago, I had a depressive period after a breakup and started telling the odd mate over a pint or two, and the outpouring and sharing that came back, I found remarkable, and I still talk about it now 14 years later. People are often just looking for the opportunity to talk, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. We and again at the club, I consider that we're I say lucky. That's probably the wrong word. You know, we put effort into building time to allow the players to talk, and that sounds a simple thing, but actually in a what is clearly a very high pressure stroke high performance environment, the easy thing to do is just to concentrate on the next session, the next analysis session, the next whatever, worry about the Saturday. But what happens is that pressure just continues to build. Invariably, that will affect them. And Tom mentioned about young men, because it's what we've got to remember as well, is that most of these guys and the girls, they're generally still young, formative people. So their ability to cope with things is not quite fully developed. So giving them the opportunity to talk, and we have structured mental health sessions throughout the season. We tend to try and get 3 to 4 in. It was difficult during COVID, as you can imagine, but we did separate stuff from there. And again, we're very lucky in the club that the boys, first off, they understand that there's a level of trust in me, and the club are very good in that if player X comes to see me with an issue and does not want that issue to go any further, then that's it. No one, and that was with Guzzy as the previous coach, with Billy now, they all understand and respect that. I suppose the skill is identifying that if we think there's a serious issue, is getting the player to recognise that. But again, then we've got sports psych, we've got access to clinical psychology, we've got mindfulness coach. So we've almost got 3 or 4 levels where the players can talk. And we also do something different, I think, to most clubs. We've got what we call a support group. So it's myself, a couple of the medics, the sports scientist who measures their sleep patterns, their mood patterns through the Kitman app. And we use that almost as a warning sign as to why is player X not sleeping well, because invariably there is a reason behind it that may be performance related. And if that is, can we address it? But it may be a relationship issue. It may be gambling. It may be, etc. Mum and dad, whatever the issue may or may not be. Because what I have found is that 90% of the issues, it's not that they're necessarily mental health issues, is they are life problems. But if you're not equipped necessarily to deal with it, because all you've done is you've gone to school, you've come into rugby academy, everyone tells you what to do every time of the day, and then you hit with this problem, you just don't know what to do. And that's where, because clearly, as you can tell by my bald head and grey hair, I've been around quite a while. So invariably, I can answer a lot of their life problems, and I'm hopefully astute enough to recognise when I can't, and then pass that on to. But hopefully, what we tried to do is to stop everything early, and therefore communication is key in that.
Yeah. So understanding that although you can hear from people symptomatically when things aren't great, you can actually focus on a proactive approach to prevention rather than just treatment.
Yeah, and that's again where I think we're pretty good at the club, and there is, I won't go into other Premiership clubs, but I've got data that supports that actually preventative wise we're doing very well, which is clearly where we were. And it's not about a competition with other clubs, because we want all clubs to be very good at this. So we tried to get ahead of it and recognize early and put a plan around a given player, because they need support, because it's bloody tough, particularly in today's social media environment as well. I mean, it can be absolutely brutal.
Well, we'll come on to that in just a second, I think, with Charlotte. One thing I just wondered, I mean, you mentioned that app. I mean, in a pre-COVID time, the reason for a lack of sleep might be because someone snuck out for a couple of extra sherbets on a night out midweek, and their sleep patterns are all over the place. Has the last year and the nature of COVID sort of turned up different things to what you might normally used to, and also the added stuff of dealing with the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting period, actually. I mean, if I rewind, where were we? March 14th last year, whenever it was, when it sort of became a serious issue. Our final was cancelled against Sale, if you remember. And the boys were sort of sent home, and everyone's thinking 2 to 3 weeks. But after about a month, and then I remember speaking to Billy and Guzzy at the time, and they were trying to put development plans around players and trying to put all this stuff around them to support them. And I remember saying, we've just got to let them adjust first, because I think people need to adjust what actually sitting in your house for 23 hours a day meant. And again, I suppose I was fortunate in my previous profession, where having been to pretty much all of the world's environments that are some very austere with with no Wi-Fi, with no access. So I could relate to it. And we did actually have a lot of conversations with lots of players. We then got into a routine, but it was important to let them just adjust first. And then we actually started, I don't know how many boys jumped into your quizzes and all the rest of it. I mean, so we got into a bit of a social and development routine as well, because players used it to get better at anything. Guitar, languages, cooking, you name it. There was all sorts then.
Yeah. Did you have some of them do the quiz? I found out Dean Richards was doing my quiz.
there was all sorts of boys doing your quiz. So good on you.
Excellent. Well, that's lovely to hear. So you mentioned social media a couple of seconds ago. I mean, Charlotte, we recently saw the social media boycott regarding online abuse of athletes and people across sport. How much of a problem have you found that? Have any of your teammates found that?
Yeah, so I think it's really hard when you're a young athlete because you're not normally exposed to that kind of stuff. So I think the younger athletes have taken it very negatively, obviously, and it's like, why would I want to be involved in a sport where, it's almost like the community isn't supporting you as an athlete? Whereas, athletes that have been around for a long time, they just feel sorry for them. It's like you're not getting any gain on commenting something negative on posts and stuff like that. So they just kind of take it on the chin. But it's one of those things where you just get used to it. And it's like you're numb to the comments now. I guess it's just how you take it, but especially being a young athlete coming into an environment like Quins and seeing the kind of comments like, you're too masculine or you shouldn't be playing rugby, it is a hard thing to take.
Yeah, and I guess there's, I often call it the feeling of pushing water uphill, the nature of constantly, I work a lot in the women's game, constantly having to prove that it's worth it, that the women's game is worth the investment, that the quality of players are good enough. How challenging is that side of things, which I guess you're living with on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, no, it's actually exhausting, to be honest. It's like, how are we in this day and age and these kind of comments are still like normal, like when are people really gonna wake up and kind of see that the game is evolving and, it's not, you need to support that rather than keep like challenging it. So.
And have you seen it sort of be worse over the last few months? Obviously you guys, it took a while for the Prem 15s to get back playing, but then it was taking place while there was still quite a fair amount of lockdown still going on. So did you get that sense that it was kind of, the devil's work for idle hands, and that while people were sat at home and you were playing, there was more of this stuff?
Yeah, I definitely think over lockdown, obviously we were very lucky enough to be tested twice a week so we could keep playing, stay in the league. So yeah, obviously you have those keyboard warriors at home wanting to add their 2 pence to everything, just because there's nothing else for them to do. There's live sport going on and we're fortunate enough to play, and they just some attacks were definitely sent out. Yeah.
But I guess on the one hand, there's knowing that that's what they're doing, but on the other, even though you know it, it can still be affecting you.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there is like a system in place where, if there is something that has bothered you on social media and you voice it to other members of staff, they'll take it down, they will sort it out, which is obviously very good that they manage it. It's just unfortunate that it's a regular thing.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now, I can see, obviously, two of our gentlemen, well, obviously Andy's wearing his Quins colours and Glenn and Tom are sporting their associated charity work. I mean, Glenn, Movember on your chest, it's been hugely popular. I did it in 2011. The ginger thing that was here, more like my eyebrow had come down for a drink. How have you seen that grow and the impact it's had?
Well, yeah, because I mean, like personally, I only started it because I noticed the Quins players a few years ago. Everyone started sporting these ridiculous moustaches. So I was, what's that all about? And found out, it was for Movember. So personally, I started then kind of as a well, the Quins players are doing it, so I'll do it, and then it really has like taken off, and kind of I think my experience, the flip side of Charlotte's with the social media thing is I have zero ego, so I'm quite happy putting a ridiculous thing on my face for the sake of charity, and putting it out there into the world. And the comeback has been really great, and really positive. And I think the rest of my community ambassadors were really focused on using social media to help grow this movement, and start conversations. And I think even when I've had negative comments, I've tried to use that as like, okay, well, you might not validate what I'm doing, but there might be someone in your life that does, or okay, that's fine, that's your opinion, this isn't for you. It might be for that that 18-year-old, like Tom was saying, that is under so much pressure at school, thinks they have to sort out their whole life in front of them, and there's this ridiculous middle-aged man with a moustache saying, it's you don't have to have everything figured out. There is a path. There are people out there that that will help you.
Yeah, and what about the importance? I mean, we heard from Charlie earlier with regards, the ally work that her and Langi Tuima are doing with Brave Mind. What about that player representation role in something like Movember? Because it does resonate, doesn't it? People do see it. People do ask questions about what it's all about. And I always say with any of these sorts of issues, if it starts one conversation in a crowd between a mate and his other mate who starts to tell him that actually he's not been feeling so great, then it's a win.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, obviously I'm a Quins fan, so I noticed the Quins players, doing it. And then, like with the foundation, a couple of years ago, you had, Robbo and Mike Brown and Danny Kerr did the Be a Man of More Words campaign, which was incredibly powerful. You're speaking about their personal experiences with that. And then obviously the big man, Mr. Marler, I just love the guy because he's so open with his own mental health issues. And for a guy like me who loves his rugby, to see someone at that elite end saying, I've got the same problems, that really speaks to me.
And the nature of him being a big grizzly hard-looking bloke is also part of it, isn't it?
Exactly. I tweeted him the other day saying, I can't wait for this to be over because my one wish is I want a big man hug off of Joe Marler.
Excellent. It's a good ambition to have. I mean, Tom, we talked about Charlotte being an ambassador for Brave Mind. These players who have a role. You've got ambassadors across various sports with blokes, haven't you? How important is that?
Yeah, I think just having almost like Glenn just alluded to, in the fact that you have somebody who is so globally known in the rugby community, like Joe Marler or Chris Robshaw or Danny Kerr, speaking about the importance of men and people in general, talking about their mental health, talking about their own experiences. It almost adds, as I always like to say, it adds almost like a humanistic kind of element to them as an individual, because I think so often, and I think it partly goes hand in hand with the online abuse thing, is very often rugby players and athletes in general are seen as as these kind of elite individuals, but nobody really takes into consideration that behind that there is a person with thoughts, with feelings of their own. And for example, some of our rugby based ambassadors, the likes of Tom Lindsay, Alex Reeder, Matt Jess, all have had absolutely fantastic careers. And to actually, very similar to Glenn, as a lifelong rugby fan myself, first and foremost, when I actually started Blokes, to be able to talk to these guys who I'd watched for years and looked up to for years, and just actually have that conversation where you're actually singing off the same hymn sheet, and you can almost, you know, to hear someone like Tom Lindsay say, you know, I can completely understand what you're going through. I've been through something similar myself. Just it's humbling more than anything. And for me, I just feel so fortunate that we have, you know, all of our rugby ambassadors. We have ambassadors from Team GB, professional boxing, cricket, and I just feel so blessed to have these amazing individuals who not only are willing to use their platform and their experience, but actually take the time to just help and support. And I think actually having some of these individuals using their own voice to promote the importance of men, to talk about their mental health, is just, it really for me is an incredibly amazing thing. And I think over the last year in particular, I've actually, although obviously we haven't been able to meet up physically, I've actually got to know some of these guys. And again, that still seems crazy to me that I can go into my phone book and I have like Tom Lindsay's number, Johnny Liotta's number, Sonotti's number, and I'll just check it, you know, even if it's just a conversation about what have you done at the weekend. As a rugby fan at heart, that for me is incredible. So yeah, it truly is absolutely amazing. And I also just want to take this opportunity to say Sai and Nick and Adrian and everybody at Brave Mind are, again, doing some equally incredible work. And I think, you know, as Charlotte will know better than anybody else, their line of ambassadors and affiliates are absolutely incredible. So, you know, I think the rugby mental health community is something that is growing stronger and stronger. And I think the more people that we can get raising the issue and talking about the subject, the easier it will become.
Yeah, let me tell you, by the way, 12 years as a journalist commentator, I've got Sarah Hunter's number. I've got Emily Scott's number. It doesn't get any less exciting. Still like, look, he's texting me. I'd be much cooler about it. No, I'm not. Sandra got me a coffee before I arrived the other day. I was beside myself. So one thing I thought, Tom, that I wanted to follow up on, I mean, and I know this will sort of have relevance to Andy, and we'll come to this in a second, but you know, the Kyle Sinclair piece, if anybody saw this over the weekend, which you know, was Sarah Elgan's interview with BT Sport with Kyle, man of the match performance for Bristol Bears, former Quins man, end of the match, and he got visibly emotional about having missed out on British and Irish Lions selection for South Africa. It was a beautifully handled interview, and he was candid. Now, my partner actually said, I think what you're seeing there is a bit of the damage done by the way the selection is done, because we have this you know, very historic and traditional way that the players find out at the same time as the public, and week in, week out, players are selected or they're dropped, or you know, for whatever reason. And it just made me think, well, is there an argument in today's day and age to say, actually, with the nature of the spotlight, with the nature of the sort of the eyes on these individuals, is it kinder and more considerate to have that private conversation from Warren to the people that haven't made it, and to maybe the people that have, so that you avoid what ultimately what we were seeing from Kyle Sinclair, which could be, you know, a bit of a traumatic emotional response in front of us after having gone through something that upset him. Do you find, Tom, in chatting to any of these sort of sports people, that actually it's a bit of the day job as opposed to anything else going on in their lives that sort of can weigh heavy on them in terms of their mental health?
Yeah, I definitely think in terms of the line selection in particular, I think it must be very difficult as a player, especially a player like Kyle, who I think for a lot of people, they thought he would be a shoo-in to be on that plane. I mean, I know I definitely did. And I think it must be so difficult to actually learn, as you say, at the same time as everybody else, that you haven't made that initial selection. And then I don't doubt that his phone will have been going off and with texts and notifications like, oh, mate, I'm so sorry, or from family, I'm so sorry, or seeing tweets from people saying, even if it's just a tweet saying, oh God, I can't believe Kyle Sinclair hasn't been selected. You know, it almost in a roundabout way, in my opinion, I think it adds a bit of salt to the wound. And you know, even if you are reading messages from people who are saying that they're very shocked and, you know, they're really disappointed not to see you on the plane, I don't think that makes it any easier. So I definitely think there is an argument for that conversation to be had in advance, because I think it would allow players that buffer between knowing and the squad being announced to actually process their emotions or seek help within their club or externally to process their emotions. And yeah, you know, like you said, Nick, I think even on a weekly basis, players are picked, players are dropped, and you know, I think I would be lying if I said that I'd had really in-depth conversations with the rugby guys in particular who are affiliated with Blokes, but you know, I definitely think there is probably a link between certainly lower self-confidence and self-esteem. But you know, I mean, it may be something that Charlotte is better placed to comment on, because obviously it may be something that she's experienced or her teammates have experienced. But yeah, I definitely think, going back to the Lions thing in particular, I think it was a bit of a weird one. It was somewhat nice to see Kyle let himself go, in terms of just letting the emotion come out, but also, like you say, it was upsetting to see just how upset he was. But then again, I think that does show his passion, and it does show how much the Lions means to him.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think it is worth coming to you, Charlotte, I think, because, I mean, you know, you were kind enough to say that you may not have a mental health journey of your own, but maybe hearing a bit of this might make you think, do you know what, actually, it can be frustrating if I'm missing out on selection on this week or that week.
Yeah, do you know what? Before I comment on that, with the whole Carl Sinclair interview, I was actually speaking to my housemates about this, and it was obviously just raw emotion, because it's still very fresh. The team only got announced the other week, but I think, as raw as it was, and obviously sad it was to see, he is an inspiration and a role model to so many younger athletes, and I think that was so good that he was just so honest about it, because seeing a hero like that, like opening up about, you know, not being mentally like happy about it and really struggling, is going to help so many more people, you know, actually speak up and make the first move if they need help.
That's a really interesting angle, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was such a good interview to have, and obviously, yeah, just the honesty of it was amazing. But yeah, selection, this season's actually been quite tough, I think, for many people, because firstly, our squad got cut down, so we've only got one team, so we have a first team and no development team anymore. And I think Andy will know about this as well, but obviously, like, some of the academy boys go out on loan, and that hasn't been able to happen this season because of COVID. So it has literally been, if you aren't selected in that team, you're not playing rugby, pretty much. So I haven't been playing, I can openly say I haven't been playing very much this season. It's been quite hard, and still quite a young player, and the talent we have in our Harlequins team is amazing. So it's a struggle week in, week out, and it is very difficult to just kind of go through each week on selection and just think, do I really have a chance? Like, don't I have a chance? You know, it can be very harsh, like, you know, seeing the team going away to places and playing and just spending time together. It is very hard on you as an athlete that is missing out on that opportunity. So yeah, it can obviously have some mental implications, like, am I not good enough? Like, why am I still here? Like, you know, you do have to kind of think back to why you play the sport, why you love it, what's your whys for it. So it's definitely challenging with selection. It really is, yeah. Yeah,
I can imagine. It's that nature of mental health being part of our everyday, really, isn't it? Part of everybody's own life. Just to mark everybody's call, we've got about 20 minutes left. If you've got any questions that you would like to get across to the guys, then use the Q&A section of the Zoom. Tap something in there, and I'll do my best to pick it up. But we will just continue. But yeah, get any questions in that you may have for our esteemed panel. That would be wonderful. Andy, we mentioned Joe Marler a couple of times, reading today that he's actually called for a clinical psychologist to be put on the British and Irish Lions tour to South Africa this summer, not just a sports site to improve focus and performance, but a clinician. How seismic do you think the shift is about how sports teams recognise they now need to look after their players?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, Joe is, you know, he has this persona about this character, but he's actually a hugely intelligent guy as well. So if he has said that, I haven't seen it, but if he has, then he'll be saying it for a reason, and he'll have thought it through, and there'll be a need for it.
Yeah.
So that's not in doubt. But I know it's something that we do at the club. So I would be very surprised if Warren and the team do not have something in support, because not only are they dealing with the pressure of the Lions and the isolation that they'll have to go through, and I know it's a little bit unknown as to what that isolation and COVID bubble is going to look like, but it's certainly not going to be a traditional Lions tour by the sounds of it. So I would think it's absolutely needed in that, on that trip. And it probably needs to be recognised better in sport as well, that there is a difference between a sports psych and a clinical psychologist. And if I'm brutally honest, when I initially came to the club, I didn't quite understand the significance that there was a requirement for both.
And for those who are on the webinar, what do you define as the difference?
Well, so if we are talking about clinical, so I'll put into a couple of simple things. So we've got a couple of players, and it doesn't matter who they are, who are seeing the performance psychologists because they have got performance-related issues around dealing something with specifically around a process maybe, or pre-match anxiety, or something that is not a clinical disorder. But then if someone has got a clinical depression, then therefore there are subtle differences. And also a good sports psych will be able to help them deal with pressure. I mean, we had I'll go into it very briefly. We had an interesting chat after the Bristol game, when I don't know if you recall it, we were 8 minutes left, we were 10 points to the better, and Bristol, to their credit, beat us in the last play of the game, and we had a discussion around dealing with pressure, and it was a really and largely player led, we've had some good results since then, which have been in a very similar situation, no more so than the crazy game that we had yesterday.
Yeah, I mean that must be fascinating, though, mustn't it? Because Nick Evans can do what he can in attack, and Adam Jones can do what he can on the scrum, and things can be, going in a 7, 8, or 9 out of 10. But where you have something like pressure, which is so intangible in a way, but actually to be able to do work with the sports psych, and then actually to be able to see a team close something out a week later, you're as valuable to adding points to that total and getting a victory as to anybody else, aren't you?
And I actually related it some of the stuff. I thought about what I used to do in my previous day job, which was a pressured environment. But it doesn't matter what you're wearing. Pressure is the same, but a lot of it is to do with actually understanding and almost embracing it. I'll give a shout out to a couple of players in particular. Alex Donbrand, Marcus Smith, and Steph Louise in particular, and of course you've got Dannies and Brownies and all the big. But actually, them two young players in Domos and Marcus have actually really got a grips with it, and the way that they controlled the latter part of the game, and obviously Marcus gets all the glory because he goes under the post for the try, and that's absolutely quite right. But actually, it was the real good leadership of Domas, because Steph was off the field by that stage, which is brilliant. But actually, is more about their inner characters. You just got to nurture it and develop it, because dealing with pressure, I believe, is partly it's innate, but it can be developed. And again, we're not there, but we're getting better. Yeah,
brilliant. I mean, Charlotte, how much do players self-reflect on their own mental health needs from your awareness of yourself or your teammates? I mean, because it's fine having a sports psychologist, but players, I guess, perhaps need to recognize that they may benefit from using them.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, so Jilly, our psychologist, is around all the time pretty much. So it is, if she thinks someone's not right, or if we don't think someone's right in the team, like, we can go talk to her, or we just have that personal conversations ourselves. But yeah, we do similar things to, I think, the boys, like with Andy has said, we have mental health chats, like meetings and stuff like that, kind of like workshops that are implemented into like our program. So, if you are struggling, it's just another reminder that, you have people around you, like you have the support, like use it, like don't bottle up, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's just, things are put in place for us to kind of think like, are you okay? Like, do you need help? Like, do you want to talk to anyone about it? Just, making someone aware.
Yeah, okay. Glenn, what are your sort of thoughts on that area, and perhaps how it relates community-wise?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, like from a grassroots, sort of rugby perspective. Obviously, we don't have psychologists or anything like that, but something very simple from a personal, my own personal experience that's happened a couple of times is, you're 70 minutes into a game, I'm absolutely blowing, down on my knees, and it's like, oh, do I really want to be here? And a couple of times I've just had one of my teammates come up, drag me up by my collar, come on, Clarky, we need you. And just that simple sentence, is right. Okay, my team needs me. Get me up, get me going. Hit that next ruck. Go for it. Just for I've got 10 minutes to go for it, and then it's over. We're in the bar. But even just that, having your teammates tell you that they need you, from my own personal experience, it's just like, right, okay, someone needs me. It doesn't matter what I'm feeling at the moment, that's going to give me a real boost.
Yeah, I had that experience actually with a coach at sort of grassroots level. I mean, I play a lot of touch and was playing in the Euros in 2018. Played a game against Scotland. They ran the same move about 3 times and scored on me every time. I ended up going and just basically sitting under some trees in the corner of the fields at Nottingham and bawling my eyes out because I just felt completely useless at what I was trying to do. People were trying to tell me what I should do, and it turns out there was something else that should have been tweaked in our defensive pattern anyway. I felt awful, but I kind of had to try and turn things around on my own with no support site, no other support, and just sort of went up to the coach when I could find him, and I just said, I'd like to, if you will, give me the chance to get on the field. And he just looked at me and he went, "You're starting the next game." He goes, "You're getting straight over this and you're going straight in." And I was like, "Okay, thanks."
Yeah.
But went in, and it was that nature of someone just going, I've got your back on this, and you're going to be absolutely fine, and it made all the difference. I mean, Tom, how do you aim to keep the dialogue going on mental health?
I think first and foremost, my ambition, my aim, and my hope for not just the future, but for the present, is the fact that we, from a men's mental health perspective in particular, that we work to make the conversation around mental health and thoughts and feelings more commonplace in everyday conversations. Because I think it was touched on in Roman Kemp's Our Silent Emergency documentary, but how are you is it's the most important question that we could ask anybody, whether that's a friend, a family member, or a colleague. And very often we just brush over it. Yeah, I'm fine. How are you? When actually you might not be fine. You might have had the worst week of your life, but you just feel compelled not to make your problem somebody else's burden. And I think that's where this whole idea of I suppose the whole idea of your personal mental health being a burden needs to change, because I think definitely in terms of what we're trying to do is our main kind of, I suppose, element of what we do or what we provide is we have a forum-based platform on our website where men who are age 16 and over can create a free account and just join a community of like-minded people who are all very open to the idea of talking about their thoughts and feelings. It's very much a platform where, and I don't like to use the word informal, but it's very much a more relaxed, safer kind of environment in terms of people sharing experiences, stories, advice, tips, and guidance. And I think ultimately, just keeping the conversation, as I said, keeping the conversation going and actually not feeling obliged to cover up and mask how you are actually feeling is something that I feel is so important. And don't get me wrong, I understand wholeheartedly what I'm saying is not groundbreaking. It's not exactly new, but I feel the more that we do talk about it, and the more that we all within the mental health space keep pushing for the same thing, whether that be we're working in male mental health or female mental health or rugby or whatever it may be, if we all keep pushing the same thing in the same direction, then hopefully that'll be the catalyst for change, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think while there may be many things that can be said again and again, sometimes they just still need to be said. Glenn.
Yeah, sorry, I was just wanted to kind of jump in on what Tom was saying there, regards conversations, and just kind of do a little plug for a Movember tool. They actually have it's called Movember Conversations. It's more aimed at if you feel that you've got a friend or someone that's going through a difficult time, but you don't know how to start that conversation. It's like an AI system where you can put in what you want to say, and it will virtually take you through a conversation of and give you hints and tips of what language to use, what language to avoid, and just kind of steer people in the right direction, so that if you are having that conversation, you're improving the situation. Because I know personally in the past I've had conversations with friends where the language that I've used afterwards, I thought, why on earth did I say it like that? So if you are struggling of how to start a conversation, that's a fantastic tool. Plug over.
No, that's good. Thank you for letting us know. Excellent. We've had a couple of things through on the questions. One was actually a very nice message. The user is down as Kathy and Sarah, just saying a massive thank you to Quins, responding to a tweet that was directed and was checking that this person was okay, and said, I was scared, but I posted I'm not okay, but I'm getting GP help before they could stop themselves. And then a Quins player message DM'd them out of the blue, and the Quins Foundation got in touch and organised a phone call to support. It means more than I can really say. So that is a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that with us. There's a question here from Debbie, and Andy, I might ask you to field this one, and maybe Charlotte, if you'd like to contribute. So, is there any difference in how women support each other versus how men approach support? If so, is there room for learning from each other's methods? Andy, first of all.
It's a really interesting question, because when Charlotte was talking, so I work with Gillian quite a lot. We have a lot of sort of informal conversations, and we'll sort of throw things to each other. But what we've never done is actually jump into each other's sessions. And it was when Charlotte was talking, I was thinking, actually, is this something that we could, when she said about us doing similar things, is this stuff that we could go together? So even just coming on this call has made me go down that path. Do I think that they are different? I don't know is the answer. I mean, because probably naively, I've not jumped in on the women's side, so it will definitely force me to do that. But when it's interesting when you look at the data, and I'm not saying this is a male or a female problem, but it's males, particularly in two age groups, who do not fare well when it comes to the severe end of mental health and suicides and stuff like that. So it's definitely something that maybe we could learn from them, or my mother would have said that just women are tougher. That's what she would have said. But it's a really interesting question, and I don't know the answer, but I'll definitely get into it.
It's provoked food for thought. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Charlotte, did you want to add anything on that one?
Yeah, pretty much what Andy said. I'm not sure what exactly Quins Men do on the topic of mental health, but I know it's probably quite similar to our program. But yeah, probably something that will be a future thing to do in the future, to be honest.
Yeah, excellent. Glenn, what do you find are the main areas where support is needed? Where do you think we need to shine more light where the community game's concerned?
I think, especially with the youth, angle, because I've just got a bit of Movember information here. It's like it says for 75% of men experiencing mental health problems, their issues began before the age of 14. So, that's quite scary, really, to think,
Mhm.
that young, boys really, are experiencing, mental health issues. So I think definitely we're in the community game, and this is like the work with the foundation, I think is amazing, because they do a lot of work going out into schools, tackling that stigma of mental health, and it is like sort of that. I remember being that teenage boy, mental health was definitely not something that you would talk about, and if you unfortunately did, it was something that you wish that you hadn't.
Well, the irony being that, and I'm not here advocating drug taking, but we all had the drugs talk at school.
Hmm.
But how many lives is that claiming compared to mental health? I mean, it's these are why these conversations need to be happening younger and younger, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. I mean, over the last year, you just got to see, in this pandemic, the rates of suicide amongst young people have just risen, frighteningly. So yeah, I think it's definitely, schools, youth groups, anywhere that you're collecting young people together, there needs to be in place some form of discussion regards mental health. And it's, if you don't want to talk to us, go and talk to these people, making it available, because every teenager's got the whole world in their hands 24/7. So the access is there, it's just letting them know where they can go for it.
Yeah, good stuff. And Tom, obviously part of the bloke setup is hearing a male tale. What do you hear from those who share a male tale with you?
I think the one thing that I've definitely noticed is if you give men the platform to actually be honest and open, 9 times out of 10 they will take it. And I think it doesn't have to be. I always use this example, but it doesn't have to be something as menacing as "How is your mental health this week?" Because ultimately, it's not a question that we tend to ask. But if somebody like I alluded to earlier, if you say "How are you?" and someone says "I'm not so good," actually, that being the opportunity to kickstart a conversation where you go, "Oh, come on, mate, let's go for a walk, or let's go and grab a beer, let's go and have a chat." I think that is such a powerful thing to know that you don't have to deal with things on your own. And I think often for people who are struggling with their mental health, that hopelessness is often the worst part, and you feel that you almost feel you're broken beyond repair, and you feel that nothing that anybody says or does is actually going to make any heap of a difference. So yeah, I definitely think the nicest thing, obviously you want to speak as anonymously as possible, but the nicest thing that I've certainly seen on our forum is the fact that someone who's based down in London could be speaking to somebody who's based up in Castleford, and it doesn't matter that they've never met or never spoken before. This one overarching thing of wanting to help men come to terms with their mental health is what connects them and what actually drives the conversation. And again, I always use the example, but a lovely, and it may seem very small to a lot of people, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it was really, really big, was probably about 6 months ago, we had somebody who used the forum and said they'd found themselves drinking more beer during the week, and they found it was becoming a bit of a routine sort of thing, and they wanted to nip it in the bud before it became a habit. And as soon as that was posted, somebody jumped in who didn't know this guy, had never met before, and said, "Oh, I found myself doing the same thing about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but what I actually did was, instead of buying a box of Amstel or Moretti with my shopping every week, what I'll do instead is I'll buy a box of glass bottled Coke Zero that I'll keep in the fridge, so I'm still getting the feeling and the sensation of having a glass bottle, but I'm not here to say Coke Zero is not is good for you, because obviously there are arguments both sides, but yeah, but I think so just little tiny things like that, I think that can make all the difference. And yeah, I think ultimately with blokes, because I don't ever say one thing is better than the other, because ultimately mental health is different for everybody. But I think overarchingly, we just want to offer men another option, which I think you can never have enough of.
Yeah, no, that's very well put. And I guess, you know, it's a good note to end on, probably on the male perspective. And Charlotte, I guess, as the women's game continues to grow, hopefully there are plenty of lessons there that as it gets more competitive, all this sort of stuff, the pressure goes up, that and where the mental side gets more challenging, that actually there will be more of these structures in place, you know, already that will hopefully help women's athletes along as well.
No, 100%. Yeah, I think like you said, because the women's game still isn't where the men's game is at just yet. It's obviously growing. But yeah, hopefully once it is a lot bigger and it's developed a lot more, we will have things like, you know, just more women rugby player ambassadors, you know, just growing the game itself, and also growing the game within the rugby community in things such as mental health.
Yeah, excellent. I think the main overarching thing for me, it reminds me of the late great Bob Hoskins. Andy and maybe Glenn will remember the old BT adverts that he used to do, where he just say, "It's good to talk." And they could rerun those, I think, and it would probably help an awful lot of people. There's so much more we could talk about and touch on and get even more insight on the players from Andy, I'm sure. But our hour is up. A huge thank you to all of you who've taken part, and to everybody who's been watching. I was going to actually, James, before you popped up, I was going to ask everyone to look very nicely into their cameras, and we could take a little screen grab of everybody here for social media purposes, or anybody who's watching who wants to. So let's take a little picture in 3. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Well done. I've taken a copy myself. So it just remains for me to thank enormously Andy Sanger, Glenn Clark, Charlotte Wellbelove, and Tom Home. Thank you, guys. Some lovely honesty from all of you. And Andy's got some homework to go and do. There's plenty that I think we can all take from it. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Nick, thank you as always for expertly moderating tonight's discussion. Thank you to Charlotte, Glenn, Tom, and Andy for your time. And to all those listening tonight, thank you so much. Look out for our emails relating to our next event taking place later this month on race and ethnicity. Have a great evening and see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.